Welcome to Ministry Mondays with Meg. I'm Meg. I am Reverend Meg Biddle. I currently serve as the National Coordinator for Ministry Life and the ABPS, American Baptist Personnel Services, at the Leadership in Mission building, and we are in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Ministry Mondays is an opportunity to invite friends and colleagues to come and share about what ministry is like for them today. And today I have joining with me Reverend Joy Martinez-Marshall, who is the pastor at First Baptist Church in Lincoln, Nebraska. You have like a great big long title, just like I do. It's like all a mouthful. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had the pleasure of meeting Joy about a month or so ago, I guess, at the Prairie Pastors gathering in Omaha. Joy, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what ministry is like for you today?
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And I don't know about you, but I never thought I would be a part of such a conference that does prairie pastors or are called prairie pastors.
Right.
It's a unique experience. But
very much.
Yes.
But a good one, but a really good one. It was great.
It was very good. There were no prairie dogs, unfortunately, nothing exciting like that. But
maybe they could work that in for next year.
I think there should be a petting zoo for next year.
Right. Let's make suggestions.
Just my thought. Well, my name is Joy, and I serve as the pastor of First Baptist Church of Lincoln, Nebraska. So I am here in the Midwest, as we call it, but is really like in the middle of the country. So that is often an interesting conversation you get into with people that are from the Midwest originally. But I serve as the pastor of First Baptist, and our church is located across the street from the Capitol building of Nebraska. And so we get to look out our front door and see the big, beautiful building. And also we get a lot of traffic here and there for different things. But ministry these days is pastoral, a lot of pastoral care and conversations and a lot of preaching. I am still getting adjusted to preaching every week, even though I've been doing it for 2.5 years. Sunday comes really quick each week.
It really does, doesn't it?
It does. It's like Saturday, and I'm like, is tomorrow Sunday? How is this already back?
Right. Yeah. And so this is your first church you've served, correct?
Yes. This is the first church that I've served. I served as a youth minister in a United Methodist church when I lived in Waco, Texas. This is my first call out of ministry, my first church, and started right before the pandemic, kind of like 4 or 5 months before that started. So it has all been really, really new.
What was that like, trying to navigate the newness of being, hi, here I am, the senior pastor, trying to figure everything out that goes with that? And then, okay, I've done this for a few months, but hi, welcome to a pandemic. What has that been like?
At the very beginning, I was convinced that I was going to get fired. I don't know why I convinced myself. So my husband and I are Texans, and we moved from Texas to follow this call to be at the church. And so we were away from our families, away from everything that was comfortable and normal, and starting this like new adult life together. And so when we got here, we were just really overwhelmed with getting set up, getting established, and we were really enjoying it. And then the pandemic started. And so at the beginning, I was really anxious because I was still so new, but it did give me the opportunity to get to know a lot of my members in different ways. So instead of just running by on Wednesday or Sunday and, chatting for 5 or 10 minutes, I started making phone calls. Mm-hmm. And so I'd cycle through the roster of people and call them as often as I could. And I was able to kind of build those connections. And luckily, the congregation, as they have said, was glad that I was young because I knew about the internets and how to use Zoom and whatnot. So we did just a lot of troubleshooting to get used to that. But I was very, very anxious in the beginning. And then near the middle, I kind of came to the conclusion that there was nothing I could do. I was like, nothing I could do but do my best to care for people. And so I just tried to lean into that. But it was a lot. I became like an editor, became an influencer, but I wasn't getting any free stuff. My YouTube was not getting a lot of likes here and there. But it was a good experience because the church could no longer use the excuse, we've never done this before, right? Or, oh, we don't do things like this, or, oh, you're new, you're younger, you're a woman, we don't really do things like this. All of those excuses were invalid, and so that's been kind of a crucial point that I can give things about now looking back, but in the beginning it was really, really overwhelming.
I really appreciate that, having served as a woman, a pastor who happens to be a woman. All of that, well, we've never done it that way. You're so young, you'll, add 40 years or so, and then you'll understand, So I love that you had that opportunity to go, okay, well, we're not going to use those excuses. That's not going to work because none of us have ever lived through a pandemic before, and here's what we're going to try. And I guess it's kind of like, throwing things to the wall and seeing what sticks, and I'm figuring it out. So I love that. Even though you were worried about being fired, you let that go, and just leaned into it. So I know some of us had conversations at the conference about the how the pandemic affected their area. I mean, how was it? I'll say, being in Pennsylvania, we're talking like basically 2 years of shutdown. How long was it for you? What was that like for you guys in Nebraska?
Yeah. So we were shut down for about over a year. And so we didn't start gathering together regularly until last Easter, I guess 2 Easters ago now that we've made it through this Easter. So we were away from each other, but we still did our Wednesday night Bible study through Zoom. And then at one point, the American Baptist churches in Lincoln, there's 3 of us, we all got together and started doing videos every other week. And so it was kind of my idea. Now, I liked it, and I think some of our folks did. Near the end, it was just a lot for everyone to handle, but because we all started meeting back at different times in person as autonomous congregations, but for a while we were doing videos together. And so the 3 pastors, we would get together and talk about scripture, like what our sermon would be about, what our scripture would be about. And so then we all have very different views and personalities. And so it was kind of neat to come together and just see where the Spirit would take us, but also have those times to be like, well, what about this? And it really exposed kind of our people, because there's a lot of overlap with the churches. If you've gone to First Baptist, maybe you've gone to Second or to Belmont or back to First or back to Second. So it was really a great work of kind of reconciling us with that history, of acknowledging it, but working together. So we were editing those videos, and then every other week we would do a service with our band, and then I'd edit those videos, and then we'd do a fellowship Zoom where we would do dwelling in the word and then just breakout rooms so people could fellowship. So we actually were able to stay pretty connected with, and we do have a smaller group, so that helped. And we had a lot of willingness on behalf of the members. They were willing to try something new because everything was so new. I was new to the position. I was new to town. This was a new experience, a new technology side that we were embracing. And so because of that, we stayed together during the pandemic. But then when we started meeting back in person, I was very fortunate. We were masked all the way up until our mandate in the community stopped. And so that was just as of like last month. And so now they're recommended, but we didn't have any discussion or any arguments over masks or meeting together. It was a beautiful experience. It was a gift for me to learn how to navigate that. But everyone was willing to communicate because we share our building with 3 other congregations. And so it became, well, in order to protect everyone and ourselves, we'll wear a mask since we have different groups in and out, a lot of kids and children and people that were unable to get vaccinated at that time because of their age. So we have been meeting back together now for over a year, just over a year, and on Sunday mornings, and then we meet on Wednesday nights now. But we still offer online opportunities for Wednesday and Sunday. So I think that's kind of the new trend. It's like we can do both as best as we can.
There have been churches, though, that have been, we don't want to do that. It's going to be in person. It's going to be in person only. And I do think that that's unfortunate when they decide that that's the way they're going to go, because I think that having your online services available, there were so many people before, like when it was flu season, older people not able to get out.
Yes, and especially with the weather here in Nebraska, it snows. It snows where you are, but it's a horror. Well, being from Texas, the snow is still something of like a mystery to me. It snowed, and we have a few members that are visually impaired, and so they don't often have rides. And so through the pandemic, they were able to be participants and be active, and people with health concerns that normally would not be able to leave. And so we actually had someone visit our church on Zoom and then join on Zoom. And then we did a special service where he was baptized during February. So we had like a 30-minute service just to baptize him. And so that was something that was really, really encouraging, and just a reminder that keeping those options available, the church has not always been great at helping people that are differently abled or have different gifts and abilities. And so now I am a huge advocate for Zoom, even though I, like everyone else, cannot stand when people, cannot mute themselves, or when you're, starting to talk and someone interrupts. But it has been such a blessing to our specific congregation that we're going to try to keep it up as long as we can.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. And I think that's wonderful about having a new member that join. Here, I'm going to visit on Zoom, and now I'm going to join and a baptism and everything. That's just phenomenal. What an experience. And I hope that, that encourages not only you, but your congregation to go, look, because we were willing to do this, look what God has done, kind of thing. So you mentioned that you share your building with, is it 3 other congregations?
Yes.
So how does that all work? Do you work together? Is it 3 very different, separate? How does that work?
So it's kind of confusing. The best way I always try to call them our sibling congregations. And so we are 4 autonomous congregations. 2 of us are actually American Baptists. So First Baptist Church is American Baptist, and then the Lincoln Corinne Baptist Church is American Baptist, and a part of our region, our Nebraska region, and then larger family. And then we have the Chinese Christian Church of Lincoln, which has been in this building since the early 90s, and are actually planning on moving next month. So they've just bought their own building. And then we have Livingston Christian Church, which is a South Sudanese congregation. And their pastor is actually a student at Central Baptist Seminary. So we do have some overlap in that sense. Now, we all govern ourselves. I am kind of like the point person for all of our groups, though. So we get together, but we do share in ministry. And so every quarter we have a joint service together. So for Palm Sunday, we had a joint service, and it was in English, Mandarin, and Arabic. And everyone shared in their music style and brings their gifts to serve in that way during our worship service. So we try to do that every quarter now, but because of the pandemic, we weren't able to do it as consistently. But we also share in a ministry. We do a sack lunch giveaway every Saturday at our location. And so every Saturday, one of the congregation leads that Saturday event. So they pick up lunches. A local retirement home makes all of our lunches. Another nonprofit that's owned or started by one of the Lutheran churches in town, Sheridan Lutheran, they get all the donations for bread and cookies, and we're kind of like one of their sites. And so it is a joint effort with a lot of different groups, but our co-leadership are all four of the congregations that use the building. And then they lead in that sack lunch ministry. And then our First Baptist members, they pick a Saturday and they stick with that Saturday. So then we're getting those relationships built. There's a ton of overlap in ministry with different teachings and classes offered and ministry, but there also is always the fear of coming in and trying to overpower as the English speaking owners. And so that's something I've tried really hard, is to make sure our relationships are equitable and fair. And also, whenever we do these services, I always volunteer someone else to try to do the leadership part, so it never feels like we are dictating what's going on. So it has been kind of a unique challenge in that. A lot of moving parts.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're navigating it well, at least. Were you able to do the sack lunch during the pandemic, or did that stop?
So that actually started in January. So
Okay.
we started it in January, and it had been an idea passed on by this nonprofit in town through the Lutheran Church. Some of our members are actually receiving assistance at this place. They do a clothing store and a dinner church model on Thursdays with dinner and a worship service. And so some of our members went. And when I started here, I was the first female pastor that they've hired. And so that church had a female missions pastor. And so they immediately connected us. Now, we want you to know other female pastors in town. And so as I got to know her, she invited me to do Thursday night worships once a month. And then right before the pandemic started, she said, "Hey, we've really been praying to expand our sack lunch ministry to the downtown area, and you guys would be a great spot." And so I actually mentioned it to a couple people, and they said, "That doesn't sound like a good idea. And we shouldn't use our parking lot because we have so many groups that meet. Our parking is limited." So I kind of held on to it and waited and waited. And during the pandemic, we studied the book of Acts. And so the compromise was, if we're going to go through this book, if we're going to spend like 30 weeks, because we do a chapter by chapter, we're very boring. Like, if we're going to do that, then we're going to commit to do something that the Lord asks us to at the end of the book. And so we kept talking about that. And I reached back out to this pastor through, of course, the Holy Spirit. Was not an idea of my own. I just kept thinking about reaching out. So I messaged her, we got together, and then within 3 weeks, the Lord brought it together with financing through a grant with ABCUSA. All of the groups volunteered to participate. A local retirement home volunteered to make all of the lunches. And then this other nonprofit called the Barnabas Community, they were going to continue to get donations for us. And so we started it in January, kind of near the end of a lot of our mask mandates or health mandates in town. But it's all like packaged up and locked up, and then we have people hand them out. And so we've been able to kind of build some relationships. And a local water company provides all of our water for us.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, they actually employ my husband, Austin. So it's kind of like an interesting little thing that we have going on with them. So it's all worked out in a really incredible way.
It's always nice when you can make those kind of connections within your community. Especially like, hey, this is Pastor Joy's, it's her husband's employer, and and look at what we can do.
Mhm.
Yeah, we said no initially, but look at what God can do um, when you just lean in and listen. Um, so I'm glad that you didn't just give up and be like, okay, well, they win.
Mm.
Because it's not about winning or losing.
Yeah.
It's really not. Um, I know you talked about they connected you with the other female pastor. Are
Mhm.
you two the only female pastors in the area?
No, actually, so a funny thing about Lincoln and a running joke that I have with one of our members is that Lincoln is secretly run by women.
Oh,
So
okay.
we have a female mayor, and then there are some historic quote unquote churches downtown. And so we're in the downtown area, and our church is celebrating 130 or 153 years this September. So we've been in this location since like 1880. We've been here for a really long time. So all of the major downtown churches, First Baptist, First Presbyterian, First Christian, St. Paul's United Methodist Church, all have female pastors.
Okay.
So the downtown pastors, we get together every once in a while. And so there are quite a few. But when I started, that was new to the congregation. So they really did a wonderful job in trying to connect me to those support people. And then our regional people are wonderful that they were able to offer a lot of support.
I agree. It's so important to have support in ministry. Um, so I did a little research background on you and the church, and I had read some other interviews that you had the opportunity to participate in. So in all of these conversations, these interviews, what's a question or two that you wish someone would ask you?
Oh, I wish. Well, I have a lot of questions just as a
Okay.
person. I guess I haven't had a lot of questions about like something that I'm hopeful for. I've had a lot of questions about things that are hard or have been
Mhm.
a challenge and, weird stuff that's happened here and there. Maybe something that I'm hopeful for, or uh, always an opportunity to brag about any sports team that I like. That's also one that has not come up.
Okay, shameless plug. Go ahead. Throw your sports team
Okay,
in there.
so I am a Baylor grad, so of course I'm a Baylor fan, but I also am from a suburb of Dallas. So unfortunately, I am a Dallas Cowboys fan. And so many would say that we are not America's team, but alas, no one else has ever had that title. So it feels right. And I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan, which they are currently in the playoffs. So those are my shameless plugs. And if you are a soccer fan, Austin is a huge soccer fan. So we are a Liverpool fan household. So Liverpool FC. And then I occasionally like to dabble in Chelsea FC because of Christian Pulisic, who is from Pennsylvania.
There you
So
go.
I think I've covered every sports probably available. Um,
And your shameless plug. Okay.
yeah, and I feel relieved that I was finally able to say it out loud because there's so many annoying Kansas City Chiefs fans in this particular area.
Okay, now we're gonna get,
Yeah,
email or
yeah.
something.
Now the comments are gonna turn really
Right.
unfortunate.
When did you do that? So hope is one of those questions that I want to ask you about. Where not just where do you find joy in your ministry? I mean, yes, you are joy, but where is joy? But let's talk about things that give you hope for the future in ministry, in the world, however you want to, wherever you want to go with it.
Okay, so I think specifically for the church right now, a place that I've seen a lot of hope, and that's been like my major theme in my preaching and in our conversations, is just having a small sliver of hope. That if we could just hold on to just a little bit, then we can make it through whatever comes, the normal church arguments, the disagreements, the question about numbers. Are we growing? Do we have enough money? We have an old building, anything that is very valid in concerns, but takes away from the vision of ministry at times, because those become the focal point and not loving God and loving neighbor. So one of our members a couple months ago talked about a little library, and she was like, I want us to think about a mini library. So in true women's ministry fashion, they elected the men's ministry to build this mini library. And the men's ministry, they were on board, but they also were like, this isn't really our idea, but there was some swaying. They ended up building this little library. And this past weekend for Easter, we were able to finally have it mounted and registered. And just the amount of hope that I see with our people bringing in books and putting bookmarks in and putting it out there, and just how we even did like a little library dedication during one of our services. And so that is something that people would think is so just small and useless, right? It's just a little library. There's tons of them around Lincoln, but that has been such just an exciting thing this week. And seeing people get it, to look at the books during our K Street lunch ministry, and having our members go out on Sunday and check it and then refill it, and then registering it and sharing it on Facebook. That has been just really, really hopeful this week. So I find hope there for the congregation to just get excited about being a good neighbor. And then I find hope in the world through stand-up comedy. So I don't actually do stand-up comedy, and often my name is Joy, but I don't ever want my name to fool anyone. I am not always super joyful. I actually get accused of being a pessimist all the time, pretty regularly. But I find joy in laughter, but often laughter through stand-up comedy. So I will watch any comedian, I'll watch any Netflix special, any HBO, and that is where I find a lot of, I don't know, joy. And I like to read. I'm kind of a reader. Now, I don't read anything like of substance, but I like to read.
I've read the story about the books,
Oh,
about
good.
your romance books, which I think is hilarious. About your, wasn't it a member of the church that brought you a bag full of them?
Yes, a bag full of books, and I've kept them. They're still at my house. I now have not read them yet. They're on my to be read list. But yeah, they're at my house. So I like to read to get away.
Oh, I think it's a great thing to work some fiction into your life, and then to be proud of yourself that you've gone, hey, I read a book that wasn't for class, or it wasn't in preparation for something I was doing at church or something like that. So yeah, I think it's great to laugh, and I think it's great to read a little fiction. But I think it's good for us. So when you talk about hope and you talk about joy, it's really in, especially like with this little library project, it's in that, hey, we voiced this dream that we have, and right,
Yeah.
and we work together to make it happen, to make it reality.
Yes. That's so true. It's a beautiful thing to see a dream come about from not only the congregation itself, but then to see everyone participate in it. And then the people that maybe didn't even know about it at the beginning are now bringing books and just getting excited. I know for our group, this church was once really big, and now it doesn't feel that way at all, but we have a huge building. And so one thing that I try to do is have us focus on any small act of kindness or love towards God, each other, or our neighbor is a win in the scheme of things, is a part of being the kingdom of God, despite what we think we should qualify as or what our metrics are. So I like to hold on to the hope, even though my closest friends would probably laugh. They're probably watching this and they're like, Joy is hilarious. Wait to like screenshot this video and send it to her later.
Right.
And like, do you
Right.
remember when you were saying like this was a silly idea? So I'm sure I'll eat my words eventually.
Right. I'm gonna read the comments and
Yes.
and hope that they are shamelessly hilarious and things like that. So maybe we can label your conversation as the funniest of all time. Yeah. Anyway, so it has been a pleasure talking with you. About your ministry. I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to get to meet you. Hopefully, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll get to do that again next year, and maybe we can work on that petting zoo idea. That's not a terrible idea at all.
I think we should really really go for it.
I think so. So Ministry Mondays can be seen on the ABHMS Facebook page and the ABHMS YouTube page. And we'll also share it all over shamelessly on social media, on Pastor Joy's page and my own. And I am Reverend Meg Biddle, and I am just so grateful for Reverend Joy Martinez-Marshall and her ministry. And we appreciate each and every one of you watching and doing the hard work for the kingdom of God. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.